Okay, so Penrose and Hammeroff. Hammeroff, I mean, I'd always knew who Roger Penrose was because his look was like the classic, incredibly brilliant Mr. Rogers kind of look. You know what I mean? Ever since I was a young kid, uh, Roger Penrose was like at the bleeding edge. And he brought a lot of people up with him too. Okay. Um, and I always respected him. And maybe I was kind of drawn in that relationship. Because now you have Hammeroff, who in 1980, between 80 and 82, I had given up on all the other means of stimulating myself to reproduce my near-death experience. Now I want you to think of something. So you have a very young, and I never say my age, but I was, we're talking kindergarten, first grade age. How's that? Trying to reproduce that event that was as fresh right today as it was 30 years ago, as it was the day it happened. So I had what I considered was a good baseline for, okay, this is what it felt like. This was the aftermath. This was the emotional content. This was the, not like where you're, I tried lack of oxygen to reproduce it numerous times, which is dangerous, but still I tried every means, because when you drown, obviously you're not getting oxygen. So one of my first attempts at reproducing it was like almost a week of testing this lack of oxygen theory, and nothing was like that. First off, there was no emotional content. None. No love, no nothing. No emotional content. Okay? It was just weird fucking experience. You wake up having a dream about ducks fucking or something. Just bizarre shit, okay? Totally unlike that. The electromagnetic stimulation with the motorcycle helmet and the probes, okay? Numerous attempts. And you can stimulate the brain to make you like the study that did this, which to me was just ludicrous, okay? Because I felt like I was more of an expert on trying to reproduce the God effect that you get with a near-death experience than any other scientist had accomplished up to that point, because not only was I the person conducting the experiments, I was the fucking experimentee. So the data I was getting was correct data as far as I was concerned. You can get the sensation of a presence, especially if you're isolated in a room. If you're isolated, away from everyone else, and you stimulate certain parts of the brain, you can have this very intense feeling of a presence. But that's it. There's no information there. It's just an instinctual stimulation somewhere in the amygdala or whatever. You're stimulating the animal, okay, in the brain to have this feeling of a presence. I think that's the animal brain recognizing the spiritual brain as being superior. But then that's just my opinion. Molecular stimulation. I tried it all. Peyote, shrooms, mescaline. I mean, some of the best LSD that was ever produced in Berkeley, okay? Double window pane, orange sunshine, Canadian window pane, white sunshine. We're talking about professors that were making this shit. Nothing like the near-death experience. DMT. Now, although intense, and although what I believe to be an actual intrusion into possible other dimensions, because this whole point of Penrose and Hameroff is that your microtubule system is a fucking digital computer. It's a digital storage device for information. More tubulin in your microtubules than you have neurons in your brain. I always looked for where, like Hameroff, where do people go when they're under anesthesia? Where does that consciousness reside when you're under anesthesia? And they can literally cut your body in half and you don't know it. Where are you? That's what started him down his voyage, and I believe he had numerous encounters with near-death experiences he couldn't understand. And I truly believe that, okay? Because that's what he talked. I haven't heard him talk about it in the last decade, but in 1981, I heard him talk about the near-death experience and how it was possible these were connected. And that's all it took for me, okay? But I wasn't quite sold on it because quantum mechanics hadn't come as far as it has. And my understanding of quantum mechanics was still fairly basic at that point. It's still incredibly basic now, but I mean, it was even more basic then. The strangeness, being able to accept what it was saying, was a savior for me. When I started seeing actual scientific, grounded science leading me down a path that I knew had existed the whole time, it was staggering. It was almost like the of course moment. No, nothing was like that. But I mean, there was definitely an epiphany and a sea change in how I went about experimenting and studying the near-death experience. I went from physical reproduction of the event. Because I drowned, I assumed that's where I would find it. No, I found it in the strangeness of quantum mechanics that allowed me to, as you look smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, you start to understand that, well, listen, there's no information contained in that proton. There's no information contained in that proton unless it was placed in a spatial orientation specifically meant to form this reality. Now, that means, again, as I've always understood, it's a duality. All of this reality was created before the physical universe. The information was there. I wasn't allowed to see, understand, ask questions about, nothing about what came before. So it's really a blank. Everything that I believe about that is simply an assumption based on the rest of my experience, what they would tell me, what they wouldn't tell me. Well, why is this? We can't tell you. Not only can we not tell you, but you can't see it. All the other information, if I wanted to ask a question and the answer was contained within any sentient consciousness in the universe that had ever existed, I saw it, physically saw it. I learned the information, saw the information as correct at that moment from the viewpoint of that observer. It's real. The information you get is real, more than just reading, hearing, the type of stimulus that we use here on this plane to get information. Okay, it's not the same there. It's instantaneously accessible. I could never reproduce any of the emotional feelings that I had. We're talking about affecting the life to a dramatic degree, okay, of a young boy for years, half a decade. 5, 6 years. Just completely wrapped up in loops by what I was going through. And then studying what I would consider the paranormal. Well, there's paranormal things that I just laugh at, like mediums. I fucking laugh. They're all charlatans and scams. Does that mean that things don't happen that I can't explain? Nope, because I've experienced them in my life. And one of the most amazing events that happened, there was two of them. Both of them I would consider to be not pleasant experiences, far from pleasant experiences. But I had things happen that I couldn't explain any other way than use the term supernatural. Once I started understanding quantum mechanics, I understood that what I had experienced wasn't a supernatural event, it was an information event. That being in an altered time space, now one of the events, there was 5 or 6 people in this car. And yeah, we were all doing psychedelics, LSD. We were 17, 18 years old, 16, 17, 18. And something happened that we either all experienced a time-space event, or everybody shared an identical hallucination at that moment. In other words, as the event unfolded, we were all having the same exact hallucination. We were all observing some kind of a weird time-space event in exactly the same way. That's impossible. I can see, I understand completely about the hallucinogenic effects of almost any drug. And I can tell you that I never had that type of hallucination. Simply put, because I'm very strong-minded, I only had weird little instances of what I would call a hallucination. One of my very first ones was, I didn't think I was getting off on this stuff, even though I was quite eager for this trip to start, because I thought this might give me some insight into my near-death experience. And I was very excited about it. And I was eating an apple, and before I finished it, I threw it down the street, kind of skipped it like that, and exploded it. And I was like, oh, and as I turned around and I started walking down the sidewalk, that apple came flying by me and hit the sidewalk and exploded, just like it did just a minute before. See, that's a hallucination. That imprint, when I turned around, was identical to what I had just experienced here. It was a mirror image. That's a hallucination. Now, if 5 other people were standing there when I threw that apple, and all these 5 people were in a different position geospatially around me when I threw my apple, when I turned around, those 5 people wouldn't see an identical reproduction of my event. If it was a hallucination, they wouldn't see my point of view that was stored and then replayed because I was on psychedelics in identical fashion. They would see their own view and opinion of what occurred. But why would they have the same apple experience? First off, why would all 5 of them have the exact same hallucination at the exact same moment? What does throwing an apple have to do with such an importance in the universe that if a human mind takes LSD, then everybody has the same wavelength or same experience or same, events at the same time? Nothing could be further from the truth, because we're all individuals. When I turned around, those 5 people that were around, they wouldn't see an apple. They wouldn't have that. They would not have that same hallucination, let alone all of them having my hallucination. If they were all going to see apples, it would all be from their perspective. Okay? I hope that, because the language I find so hard to explain my experience, okay? This quantum time event that happened really shook me. To this day, I and everyone who experienced it was shaken to their core. And I will talk about it. I will discuss it. It had to do with the guy in the truck and a young black man. So I've seen things and I've experienced things with these tools that I have that I can't explain as far as the laws of physics go. Now, as far as the laws of quantum mechanics go, yep. Yeah. Absolutely fucking possible. There's nothing in the laws of quantum mechanics that says that couldn't have happened exactly as you saw it happen. You just can't completely understand the reasoning behind it. That's all. I tried reproducing it. I want everyone to know that. This isn't some half-assed fly-by-night, I'm going to write a book and get rich fucking thing. No, I have a mission here that has to do with my near-death experience. And people that are supposed to be paying attention to what I'm saying, not every video, but they're going to see little things that absolutely go ping and flip a switch. And it will confirm or at least help them understand certain aspects of what I'm trying to get across that relates to them. I tried. Nothing's even close. I want you to know that, okay? The near-death experience is so totally different from anything else, okay? It's not electromagnetic. It's not chemical. It's not chemical. This is an event that happens. It's a physical... See, that word doesn't really work. It's an event that happens. It's a quantum event that happens, like the weird time quantum event that I had happen in my life. So that it allowed me to understand it. Okay, what happened is possible. That's a staggering fucking thing. That is a staggering thing to understand. All of a sudden, is that, oh fuck, that event it's now possible to explain it under these terms. And it was the same way with my near-death experience. I couldn't understand any of what happened until I started to understand that it could have been an actual event, and it wasn't a hallucination. It wasn't a lack of oxygen. It wasn't a religious or whatever driven experience. What happened to me was real, and what they showed me that has come true throughout my life, that's just as real. Why? Well, because the way you judge a prophet is they're never wrong, and they have never been wrong. What I was shown or what I chose to pick out has never been wrong. Accurate to a strange fucking degree. So, yeah, it's important that you understand that I tried to reproduce it, that I spent I dedicated a large amount of time and research to figure out for myself, is it possible? This is how they're explaining the near-death experience. Oh, it's an electromagnetic stimulation of the brain. I'm like, okay, so everyone that dies gets exposed to electromagnetic radiation, and that's why all of these people have a near-death experience that's almost identical, because this electromagnetic radiation only stimulates a certain part of the brain, which only allows us to have this type of experience. And that's how I was thinking back then in the early 70s to early 80s. I was looking for a way of reproducing it. I desperately needed to reproduce that so I could go on and not see the world the way I was seeing it. To no avail. No, the truth is what it is, and you must bend to its will or live a lie. So I tried to reproduce it. It is not reproducible. I dare anyone to show me any data that says this is the near-death experience quantified down to this piece of the brain, and this is exactly what causes it. I suggest that people go look at Penrose and Hameroff with quantum consciousness and start to understand, like I did, is I know where that being, that sentient, conscious, quantum entity that went to that place. I needed to know where that was at. Where was it stored? Is it like a fucking battery or what? How can you store? I mean, I can understand storing energy because we're like a battery, but information is totally different. Information cannot be destroyed. There needs to be some place here that is information based. My real soul. And I found it in Penrose and Hammeroff. Well, actually, they found each other. Penrose had a problem that couldn't be solved without Hammeroff's intuitions. And Hammeroff didn't have the let's just say street cred, okay, to say, yes, this is absolutely something that we should be looking at. So it's Hammeroff and Penrose, okay? Quantum consciousness and how it's an information storage place in our microtubules. That's why I've talked about it for 15 years, microtubules. I know everyone is tired of hearing about microtubules, but I knew the first time that I was exposed to that with Hammeroff all the way back in like 1980 was that, oh, here's an avenue now that I haven't tried and really can't try. There's no way for me to access my microtubule system. So there's, I mean, how do you stimulate it to make it reproduce a near-death experience or to have some kind of a, gigantic super intelligence, love exuding being show up? You know what I mean? So anyway, I know that, I've decided that the way to go about this is short videos. I'll just put near-death experience, whatever. And so, it's important that I tried to reproduce it. That I got sick and tired of people saying, oh, it's this. If you stimulate the brain with electromagnetic radiation, no. No, it's not an LSD trip. No, it's not a DMT trip. Listen, with DMT, what I think it does is it allows you to leak from your microtubules. It actually affects your microtubule system in some way. That you have to remember about the distances between dimensions that we're talking about here are so small that you can't imagine them. And that you don't have to leak out of your microtubule system very far to experience some of this, okay? And we're talking about your entire quantum self being exposed. So DMT is a way of maybe experiencing this weird, different reality. Okay, but no, it's not like the near-death experience. No, not. So, Penrose and Hammeroff, okay? Go look it up.